thank you for attending this webinar today on Passportal, and it's got a focus on Passportal site as well. The host today is Scott Coleman, and he's actually located in the Durham office in North Carolina. So thanks, Scott, for joining us. What's a late night for you, and for doing this webinar for the APAC partners. Just a few tips on housekeeping. Please make sure you're all on mute during the webinar. You can chat. You can use a chat window to ask questions, and you can ask questions as we go along, and we'll answer them as we go. Let us know if you have any audio or video issues, and the session will be recorded as well, so you can get your hands on the recording after. But yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Scott, and yeah, we'll get started.
All right, appreciate it, and thanks everybody for joining. Just want to go through a little bit of an agenda. So, I want to set the stage as far as what's going on in security today, what's changing in the security landscape. I've got three quick tips I'll go through as well, and then Q&A answers at the questions at the end. I'm gonna do a brief demo as well at the end of the presentation. So, as Hamish mentioned, I am Scott Coleman. I'm a senior security sales engineer here at SolarWinds. I have been with the company for about 2 years. I support all of the security products within SolarWinds MSP, and I've pretty much been in the IT industry for about 20 years. So, I've been a network engineer, system engineer, sales engineer, so pretty much the whole gambit of roles you can have in the IT industry. So the challenge, right? We're using weak passwords out there. I think we've all kind of been guilty of using simple passwords, because we've got to be able to remember them. Most likely they're going to be changed every 90 days or have some sort of policy around that. And it's just hard to remember. So we typically pick easy passwords. And the fact is, easy passwords mean easily hacked passwords. So we need to be aware of that. So the biggest, challenge facing MSPs today is the fact that the security landscape is always changing, right? So things are always evolving. There's never a set it and forget it type of solution. You've got to always be looking at how things are changing and what new solutions out there can address different security, issues. We also want to keep our security patches up to date. That's probably number one. I'm sure you've read and heard that a good amount of the security breaches in the last couple of years were due to a machine not being patched appropriately, and it allowed access or it was vulnerable, and somebody was able to get into the environment. You also want to be having training for your customers. As you know, customers, some are more technical, some are not. So they need to understand, what the issues are. What are the risks? So you need to talk to them about, what happens if this server goes down, right? So you're going to talk to them about backup in that case, or what happens if this machine is not patched properly and somebody breaches it. So you got to discuss those risks with them and take measures to protect those customers' passwords. So kind of the question at the end is your house in order? So based on all these things that I mentioned, just think about how you are securing and protecting your customers' credentials today. A little bit about recent hacks or security breaches, and I'm sure you've heard of most of them, but they're just getting more and more common. There was some dental offices that got breached, and the doctors couldn't access any of their files. So what we need to do is make sure we're patched, make sure we have firewalls in place, and data backups is just a few things we need to do. And another thing too is MSPs, like, even if you're not managing the security or have a security offering for your customers, in most cases your customers kind of assume you're doing it anyways. So you just want to be careful that even though technically you're not providing it, there is usually an assumption that you are providing it. In the lower right, you see the U.S. cert. So about 2 years ago, DHS here in the U.S. came out with the security bulletin stating that MSPs and their customers were being targeted in attacks. They weren't targeting individual MSPs, but they were targeting kind of the industry as a whole, because typically the small business is going to have less security in place than an enterprise. Not always the case, but that's kind of why they're going after that low-hanging fruit, to try to get the customer's data and make money off of it somehow. So first, quick tip. I mentioned the security landscape's always changing. So how are you equipped to face these changes? Bad guys are always evolving their techniques. I mentioned we tend to use easy passwords and reuse them. So when you have to change your password, a lot of people will add a 1 to the end of the password, and they'll use that. And they'll continue to do that just because it's easier and it's easy to remember. So what can we do to combat that? Right. We first need to know our customers and know the employees and the risks that they face. So you need to understand when a end user gets a phishing email and they click on the link, I mean, what that can do, right? What are the security issues there? And we want to focus on the risk. So not the security itself, but the risk. So, for instance, I mentioned a server going down, right? So the security would be, loss of data and productivity for a little while. But the risk is more of, how does that affect your business? And that's really what we want to, talk about with the customers, and then implement good password practices. And Passportal will help you do that in a variety of different ways. Quick tip number 2, you help your customers understand the risk. So just kind of continuing that conversation. You want to talk to them about, what the different types of hacking is. So you've got things like a dictionary attack, right, where somebody's going to be able to brute force your password and figure out what it is if it's an easy password. There's also credentials being sold on the dark web all the time. So I definitely always suggest using 2FA when possible, because if you're using 2FA, somebody could get your username and password, but they still won't be able to access the system without that code. And poor passwords are easily exploited. So just ask yourself, are you talking to your customers about adopting the right tools to help protect their businesses? A couple stats that I found interesting. So 81% of company data breaches are due to bad passwords. These are the metrics here. So 43% of all cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses. And an even more alarming, probably for you guys, is 60% of small companies go out of business within 6 months after a cyber attack. So you just got to think about that too. I mean, what would the repercussions be if one of your customers were breached and you were held accountable? So it's definitely concerning and something you should think about. So how do we protect our customers from credential theft? We need to have a couple things in place. We need to have a way to audit the access control, right? So how do we figure out who has access, who needs access, when it was accessed last, things like that. And we need to be able to change passwords or have a password rotation policy, whether that be an automated policy or a manual policy. But that needs to be done, especially on administrator accounts and accounts that have a great deal of privilege. You want to make sure that those credentials are being rotated. And at the end of the day, it's a win for you, right? If your customers are secure, that reduces the liability on your end, and it saves more time. Because if you never have to go and rebuild a machine because it got a virus, You never have to do a restoration because you know the machine didn't crash and so that wasn't needed. That all saves you time in the end. So more secure customers means you know, less risk for you and more time savings as well. And I mean, in your business, time is money, right? So the more we spend on mundane tasks, the less we're able to spend on, you know, revenue generating things. The first kind of add-on to Passportal is Passportal Site. Now this is the ability for you to allow your end customers to manage their own passwords. So that the portal's brandable, you would put your logos in colors, and then when the customer, your end customer, logs in, it's gonna appear like it's a solution that you know, you've built and you're providing, even though it's Passportal in the back end. So that's going to allow the customers to manage their own passwords. They can also share passwords with you, and you can share with them. And I mean, really, kind of the main thing here for most people is, you know, puts money in your pocket. So instead of your customers paying for another solution and paying that vendor directly, you know, why not have them pay you? So that's kind of the thought here. A few things that Passportal provides. So, you know, it is a way to centralize and secure your corporate and personal passwords. You can set up folders, or your customers can set up folders to organize and categorize their passwords, and be able to manage all the employee and data rights across all of your customer base. Actually, I'm sorry, in Site, they would be managing themselves, but that's definitely helpful. And generate strong and unique passwords. So this gets back to that easy password, you know, comment I made. You know, if we make our password, you know, capital P and then password 1, that's not really secure. But if we make it a very, you know, 15 character, lots of special characters, that is secure. But it also is virtually impossible to remember. So what we can do is utilize Passportal for creating unique passwords. And we really don't need to remember them, because you can access those credentials either through the Passportal portal, or the browser extension, or a mobile app that we have. So you don't ever need to remember those passwords because you'll have access to them. You also want to be able to run audits and reports internally to see who's got access, when they've last, you know, accessed the credential, things like that. And then kind of add on to setting up folders. Once you set up those folders, you can control access to the folders. So you may have different divisions. Maybe you have an HR folder, and, you know, only, you know, 1 or 2 people have access to the credentials in that folder. Things like that. So I kind of covered most of this already, but, you know, why sell Site to your customers? The first point is that new source of revenue, right? So, you know, why not put money in your pocket instead of your customers paying somebody else? It also is going to create a differentiator for your business. Not all customers or MSPs are doing this, they're providing this service. So it adds a little bit more stickiness to your relationship with your customer. It makes them less likely to move on to a different provider just because they're ready for a change. So it definitely differentiates you with the average MSP out there. And then, you know, it provides better security for your customers. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Any Q&A before I kind of move into the actual demo and show you the product a little bit?
Yeah, Scott, we've had a couple of questions.
Okay.
So one is from Tim Desmond. I'm kind of going backwards here from the most recent questions, but where does the Passportal data sit? Is it in Australia, US, or China, he said?
It sits, well, when you set it up, you select your area of the world you're in, and the data remains there.
Okay. Got another question as well. So is this also a two-factor authentication and Google Authenticator alternative?
It is not a 2FA alternative. I mean, we support 2FA, so you can use 2FA to log into Passportal, but we don't, the product does not provide 2FA. You still need to use Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Duo, Auth Anvil, something like that.
Okay. And is there an import feature from, say, Excel or Browser's Log? Some James Frost.
There is. I mean, I'm assuming it's referring to credentials. So we do have some import templates. For instance, there's one for clients, one for passwords and users. So you would just complete that template. So copy and paste probably from an existing spreadsheet into the template, and then you can import that template, and that'll bring over the credentials.
Okay, great. I've also had someone say, you know, about sharing the slides. So we can share the slides with you afterwards as a PDF. But I don't think there's many relevant slides you probably want to share with your clients. But yeah, I think we're happy to share them with you though. Yeah,
and we do also have a great deal of collateral. So if you reached out to your salesperson afterwards, they can provide you with a lot of good information that you can use to help sell this.
Cool. There's another question as well from Ruben Sankey. Tips on creating general notes and attaching items, IBN apps and services.
Yeah, so it sounds like you must have already kind of looked at the portal already. So, you know, I'll go into some of that when I get into the demo. I got a couple tips maybe.
Yeah, he's also asked another question, Ruben again. So tips for tech who goes out of internet range. So a quick playbook download or a tool download, encrypted container, then decrypt on site, get passwords and exit.
So I mean, obviously, you know, if you don't have internet, you're not going to be able to access Passportal. You know, the mobile app, if your cell phone doesn't have internet, same thing. But there is a way to export credentials, but it is not in an encrypted format. So we really don't have that. I mean, you can't export the credentials to have them offline, but you're kind of defeating the purpose of the security. You're opening yourself up at that point because you're storing all those credentials in a file or a PDF. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you're not going to be able to access the credentials if you have no internet access.
Yeah, Ruben's actually asked a few questions. So another one is sharing a folder of passwords from a pro user, an MSP, to a site user, so client, and all passwords inside.
Yeah, you could definitely share a password both ways. So from you to a site user. No, we don't share folders, so it's just the credential within the folder that you're sharing. But yeah, that's absolutely possible. I mean, by default, you're not going to have access to your clients, to your site clients' information unless they explicitly share the credential with you, and then it'll appear in your dashboard when you log in.
Great, and I've got Ruben again. Thanks, Ruben, for all the questions. It's good to make this as interactive as possible. So he said, is there a custom reports? So, for example, export all clients, printers, or WANs?
No, I mean, I can show you the reports we have in place. There's not the ability currently to create a custom report. So it's just the reports we have there today that you can use. But they don't address printers, things like that. But I'll try to show them when I get into the demo.
Okay, cool. We'll probably we'll leave the questions at this stage, and we'll get going into the demo. And yeah, feel free everyone else to ask questions as we're going through the demo, and we can answer them at the end.
Sounds good. I appreciate you helping me with the questions.
All right, cool. Let's get started then.
Right. Okay, so you know, first thing when you log into the Passportal dashboard, you're going to see all of the things within your customers that needs to be addressed. So the view you're looking at now would be similar to your view. So it's a view that can see all customers. You also have other ways where you could drill down into a certain client, and all these dashboards would only reflect their information. But just a few of the things you can see. You can see any domains that are about to expire that you're monitoring, credential age. Down here, it's the items that require attention. So if you have a password rotation policy to say, hey, this account needs to rotate passwords every 90 days, and it's not an AD enabled account, somebody needs to manually change that password. So this is kind of notifying that tech that logs into the system that something's got to be done. They can go through those as part of their initial, getting started in the morning. You got a credential strength chart. So very easily here, if I want to see any weak passwords, I could drill down into it. I can see which customers those passwords are for, what type of credential. So either if I'm managing it, I can change it, or I can reach out to the customer and say, hey, this is a weak password, we need to change it. And the last thing I'll go into here, because I don't want to go into too much, but is we do have auditing, right? So we capture all access, so all credentials that are used, so all credentials that are copied, they're viewed, that's all captured. And I'm going to show you where you can very easily run a report to show what access a particular user has. Both in the Passportal main portal as well as site, every user, every person that logs in has their own My Vault. So My Vault is, and what you're seeing now is my personal vault. So I'm able to store my personal passwords. I can store my banking information, and this is completely protected, so nobody else can see my vault but me. And it's based on the login. Again, you want to use 2FA to protect that, to add another layer of security there. And you can also create folders to organize your credentials. And these items are also accessible through the browser extension and the mobile application. The company vault is similar, except for this is your company's vault. So now I'm looking at the dashboard that's only showing my company information. I can go into my credentials. You can see how you can create different folders, and you could put credentials in the folders. And the significance of that is you can provide permissions to the folder. So maybe the HR folder, you only want one user, maybe the HR person and the owner of the company access to that. So you can control who has access to which folders. And everything that's in that top level is accessible by anybody in the company. A couple other things. So, one of the questions was articles. Certainly can create articles for each of your customers. Maybe that article would be a process or procedure of some kind. But it's basically, free text. You can copy and paste in here or type something manually. And let me actually go to a different client here. So if I drill down into this QuickBooks one here, you see it's a procedure on upgrading QuickBooks. So I also have on the right side linked items. So I've linked the server it's installed on, the contact that maybe the tech needs to reach out to get permission to do work on this device, the vendor, the credential needed to do the upgrade, the license. So you can attach any of the assets or documents on the right side to make it easier. So when the tech comes to this document, they have all the information at their fingertips, and you can keep it standardized, right? So when one tech goes in, he's got the same information as another tech. You can also import your assets if you're using an RMM or PSA solution today. We can bring those assets in. You can also create your own. These trackers are how that main dashboard showing that a domain or an SSL cert is about to expire. The apps and services are going to be pretty much templates. So we've built a handful of templates that are pretty much the most common that our customers ask for. We'll look at the internet WAN one real quick, just as a kind of an example. So if for Blue Sky Group, because that's who I'm logged in, what client I'm looking at, I can fill out this form, and when my tech goes into this client to do some work, he has all this information. And this is good information, because if you're doing supporting or troubleshooting an internet connection, it'd be helpful to know who's the ISP. What's the expected download and upload speed. What's the public facing IP address, things like that. And all these templates are editable. So if these fields don't fit your needs, they're easily changed. But you would have, you have the ability to create any of them here. You can create a new template. You can also add custom docs. So if you wanted to create custom docs, you can do that as well. The last part of the documentation piece is files at the bottom. So this is going to allow you to attach or upload files into Passportal. Now this is good for a couple different reasons. A common question I get is, can I upload something like a Visio or a PDF? And the answer certainly is yes. But the reason that you may not want to do it that way is, in the case of a Visio, you would need to click on the link here, and it's going to prompt you to download the file. And you may not want to have to do that every time you want to look at a Visio. So instead, you can copy and paste that Visio into an article, and it'll be stored in that article. And all you have to do is open the article, and the Visio will be right there. Another thing I didn't mention earlier when I was in articles is these are also publishable. So I could publish an article. I could say I want this available to anybody that has this link, or only people that have this password. I can expire it either after a certain amount of days or after a certain amount of views. And then another good thing too is, once you publish this, and a user has that link, whenever you make a change to the article, it's a live link, so they're going to get the updated current version. So you don't have to worry about they've got a old version of the document. It's been changed. It's all kept updated. So let me jump in here to a couple things. So the permission levels is how you're going to control what permissions a group of users have. So we have some in here already. So if we look at the tier 1 support, you can see there's a handful of permissions that they have, and then there's a whole bunch of additional ones that I could add. So you could really create a permission level that really fits your needs, if you have something a little bit more specific. And then you create a security group after that. The security group is basically what clients a set of users can access. So let's look at the executive team one for an example. So you can see this list of users has access to this single client. Most likely that's not going to be what I want. I'm probably going to want all my techs to have access to all clients. So I can certainly do that. Maybe I want to take out Blue Sky Group because they're a VIP and only certain techs can access Blue Sky Group. So I can very easily do that. A couple of the settings, I won't go into too much of it, but let's see. Under general, this is somebody asked a question about 2FA. So as I mentioned, we support Auth Anvil, Google and Microsoft Authenticator, Duo, as well as some of the older options of email, text message, and phone call. You can enable it per user, or you can force all users in Passportal to use 2FA. Just be cautious if you do that, because a lot of non-technical users won't know how to get it set up. So you just want to make sure your users are capable of getting it working if you force all users to use 2FA. We talked about the importing and exporting. So here's where you download your template, you'd fill it out, and then you drag and drop it into this window, and it would upload either your clients, your usernames, your passwords, depending on which template you used. You can also import My Vault passwords. So this is basically if I wanted to, because I'm the logged in user, if I wanted to import My Vault passwords into the company vault, I could do that. Or if I'm an employee and I'm leaving the organization, and I want to be able to take my passwords with me because I've put a lot in here, and so I want that. So I can also export My Vault, and it'll create a CSV with the credentials in it, unencrypted. You just want to be careful about that because that's all your credentials. We also have the idea of a run book, which was mentioned earlier. So it sounds like a few of you have used the product or poked around a little bit. So a run book can be used for a couple different reasons. Either potentially if you're doing monthly or quarterly review calls with your customers, you may want to give this document to them so they can see exactly what you're doing on their behalf. Or in another case, if you have the unfortunate situation where one of your clients is leaving you for another MSP, or maybe you're going to no longer support a particular client because they're just too high maintenance, too difficult, always yelling at you, or whatever the case may be, you can use that in that case as well. So I selected Blue Sky Group. And now I can select, well, what do I want to include in this document? So I'm going to just pick a couple things. So you can mask the passwords. So you would pretty much want to do that if you're going to have that quarterly or monthly review call with your customers. If it was an offboarding, so a client was leaving you, you may want to be able to provide them with a document that has all their passwords in it. So you could do that as well. And then I need to decide, do I want to enable this to be scheduled to run, periodically, or potentially I just want to create a one-time document. So I will open one up real quick so you can see it. It's a pretty extensive document. So this would have your branding. So all the branding you put in Passportal would carry over into this document, and it's going to have all the credentials. You could drill down into one of them. It's going to show you the details. You have all the articles if you selected articles when you're creating it. So there's a lot of good information here. You can't select multiple customers at once, but that tends to be too much data, especially if you're doing more than just 2 or 3. So integration, we do integrate with most of the major PSAs and RMMs today. So it just gives you a kind of a snapshot as to which ones we support. And then I want to jump over and look at what a site user would look like. So I'm going to go into one of these, go into user perspective. So now you can see what this particular site user's dashboard would look like. So you can see they're going to have their own My Vault, and I can't access it. So even though I'm looking at how their stuff looks, I don't have access to the actual credentials. And then if I'm an administrator for this site, I'd be able to add new users, and change permission levels and security groups as well if I'm an admin for this site versus a viewer. So that's kind of what site would look like. Typically, customers have a combination of both, right? Because you're going to use Passportal potentially for your internal use, so for your techs to be able to have that one-stop shop for their credentials and documentation, and then site to allow your customers to kind of manage their own passwords, and make some additional revenue. Let me see. So reports. So one of the questions was about reports. So we have a fixed set of reports right now. The most common one that we use or that's used is the passwords known by user. So if I drill down and maybe I have a technician who's going to leave, or maybe I'm thinking of firing somebody, I can go and run this report for that user, and it'll show me all of the access that they have. So I can see who the client is, the type of credential, the actual username, when it was accessed last. So maybe at this point I might say, well, that's a little concerning. When they leave, they're going to have a lot of access to stuff. So typically what you're going to do is then go into your users, and this is going to be whether it's a pro user or a site user. But in my case, I'll go into pro users. I'm going to find that account I was just looking at. I'm going to disable it. So right from a couple seconds worth of work, now that user could no longer get into Passportal. They can no longer access the browser extension or the mobile application. So they are completely isolated from Passportal. And then this shows you that same list as before. So here's all the credentials that user knows about. I can see 2 of them are AD enabled passwords, which is why we got the check here and here. Not 11 are non-AD passwords. So the 2 enabled, AD enabled, I can hit change all and change both of those right from here. Another advantage is, when you change a credential, the agent also checks to see if there's any service accounts using that credential or scheduled services. And if there is, it updates those services and the scheduled tasks as well, and restarts the services. So you kind of, in a traditional sense, typically you remote into a domain controller, you find the user in question, reset the password or change the password. Then you got to go and drill through your services to figure out, well, is this being used somewhere? And then if you have scheduled tasks, you got to drill down into those. Where in Passportal, it's all one motion and it's all done. The 11 non-AD passwords I could flag, and that's where that main dashboard I started with is going to show you items that require attention. So it'll flag them, and whenever a tech logs in and they look at the items requiring attention, they can manually change those passwords. And then once you're done, you want to go back to that report and run it again, and it should come back empty because that user no longer knows of any of the credentials that are in the system. I mean, that's kind of the highlights. I guess at this point, I'll just see if there's any questions or anything you want to look at in more detail.
Scott, it's Hamish here. We've got a few more questions. Before we get into them, do you mind going back to the slide number 11, about Passportal site and why the MSP's customer needs it?
Absolutely.
Just to bring points.
Let's see, slide 11. So this one here?
That's the one, yep. So, I mean, probably we've got a lot of demos that run in this region, but what we really needed you to do is, we talk about Passportal site, and we know that, it's quite a popular product, over in North America, and, maybe give some examples of MSPs that are selling it to their customers successfully, and how do they combat the argument that, that they've got an existing solution, or their employees are using LastPass, or what do you think is a good strategy for them to use when selling it to their partners? I just wanted to reiterate some of the points here, but also talk about some MSPs that you might have spoken to already about this.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've definitely, talked to MSPs every day. There's definitely a lot that are reselling site, for a couple reasons. It's standardizing what all their clients are using. So, they don't have one client using LastPass, another client using a different solution. And this actually provides more functionality than those solutions do. So that's another thing. So you're able to bring in that additional revenue because they're buying it from you, but then you're providing them with a better solution than the other providers that they may be looking at. And customers tend to really like it. Typically, they charge a couple bucks a user, so very similar to what they're probably paying for another solution, and it just allows you to standardize that and kind of have one look and feel with your branding out there as well.
Okay, great. I might get into some of the questions as well that we've had. So, firstly, with apologies, you asked quite a few questions at the start. probably can't get to all of them, but if you want to ask, some of the more important ones again and bring it to the top of the feed here, yeah, we can answer them. There's just quite a few there, sorry. But yeah, getting to some of the more recent ones. So Tim Desmond has said, in the reporting of the user access, can you see they exported the passwords as a document?
If they export it, I mean, that's going to show up in your audit log, but not in the passwords known by user. I mean, you'll see that a run book was created. You'll definitely see that in the audit log.
Okay. And Tim's also asked, can you stop CSV export of all passwords for all users?
Let's take a look. So, I mean, I've never done that, but you can. There's an import export permission, so you could, make sure you don't give them that permission, and they won't be able to import export.
Okay.
You got templates, add, delete. Yeah, so that's why you would do that. So yeah, you could definitely do that.
Okay, and Tim's also asked, is knowledge in manager staying, or is that being killed off?
Is knowledge in, is this MSP manager question?
Yes, Tim said yes.
Okay. I mean, my understanding is that it is not, it's not getting killed off per se. I don't think we're continuing to add functionality to it on the MSP manager side, because this is the SolarWinds solution for documentation management. So I mean, the stuff you have in there today is not going to go away, as far as I know. But we are trying to lean towards, using Passportal for documentation management.
Okay, got a couple more questions from Tim again. So does it show the user who created the run book?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be in your access control, or your report rather. So let's see if we look at, and we can look at it, but there's different reports. So it doesn't look like I have one I can show you, but that should be captured in the audit report, because we're recording all that information.
And he's also said, can you report on age of PWS?
Age of passwords?
Sorry, Tim, if you don't mind clarifying there.
If so, you can report on things like passwords that haven't been changed. So you basically would select some dates, and you say, I want to know what passwords haven't been changed since this date.
Okay, great.
So let me know if you have any, or if you get any further explanation on that question.
No, he said that's perfect. Yeah,
okay.
Tim is perfect. So there's another question from Jabin Hutchinson. So can the tracker, so domains track.com.au domain name expiry date, or do we need to enter the expiry date manually, since that info is available via whois lookup for .au domain names?
So you definitely do not have to, I mean, you do have to add the domain. So like if I add, I'll add espn.com. And what we're going to do is immediately go out and pull those records. And one of those records is a domain expiration. So once you save this, we're going to go out every 24 hours and update this. And that's where we get that. That's how we know when it's going to expire. So if a customer changed something in their DNS, maybe they renewed it, the following day, this would be updated and we'd know that it was renewed. Hopefully that answered the question. Same thing goes with SSL servers.
He just said no. It's Jabin just said no. It's not for .com.au domain names.
That is a good question. I have not heard of any limitation where that's concerned. I can certainly, if there was a example, I could type in and see what we get.
He said, who is for .au domain names does not include expiry dates.
Okay. Well, then yeah, I guess we wouldn't have that. I'd have to ask our product team to see if there's a workaround of some kind, but we are relying on that for that information. I'll capture that as a question to find out about.
Okay. I've got a question here from Luke Muscat. Is it possible to make custom trackers, for example, warranties, etc.?
You can't make custom trackers per se. What you have is your licensing here at the bottom. So I can create a license. So if I have a QuickBooks license, I can fill in the information here, and it'll utilize this renewal date to let me know when that's going to expire. And this template is editable. So if you want to have different information in there, you can. You can link information just like I showed earlier. But this is where you would do something like that.
Okay, great. So it doesn't look like we're getting any more new questions coming through. I might go back up and see if we can answer a few of the ones that we missed from Ruben at the start.
Okay.
So he said, just started a trial, so demo questions. Number one, how to create a vendor from internet/WAN section. If you are adding a new internet WAN for client, add a location form in internet WAN, so you don't need to leave and lose info you are editing. So is that, have you covered that? Sorry, Scott, or is that?
No, but I can easily kind of do that. So I mean, first you want to make sure under vendors here you have all your vendors listed. I mean, and this is a global list. So all the vendors that all of your customers may be using, you'd want to have in here. And this is where under the apps and services, the template is going to have a drop down to show you the vendors listed here. So if it's not listed, then you're right. You have to go out of that and go and add it in here as a new vendor. So there's really no way around that. So you want to make sure you get the vendor added first.
Okay. He's then gone on to ask, if adding a vendor, there are fields for their details. Can you add hyperlinks to their portals, emails, phone, etc.? So you can click on them in Passportal, not need to select a copy and paste to a browser.
Let me go back up here to. So can you repeat the question?
If adding a vendor, there are fields for their details. Can you add hyperlinks to their portals, emails, and phone, etc.? So you can click on them in Passportal and not need to select a copy and paste to a browser.
Gotcha. So this is the vendor template, but as you can see, I could delete fields, so I can certainly add additional fields, different columns. So if I wanted to add that type of information, I certainly can do that. And you'd be able to drill down into it right from here. So it's really flexible and making sure that this form, this template, meets all your requirements. We just try to put together a kind of a baseline, right? So templates they're going to cover 80% of the customers out there.
Okay, great. So we've got a couple more minutes until we kind of reach the hour. So I think we're almost done. I might just cover a couple more of Ruben's questions because no one else is asking any new questions. So he said maps, links, client sites. Can you see it on a map or all their sites on a map window or pop up to Google Maps?
No, not currently.
What else has he got? If on a vendor or client site, can you add extensions or IBR numbers to dial?
I mean, you certainly, like this vendor's template here has a phone number. I guess I'm not really following the question. You can certainly add phone numbers to the apps and services templates.
Okay.
As well as linking a contact, like I showed earlier, so you can link that contact. So when a text in a certain article or document, they have that contact on the right side linked, and they can click on it, and it'll auto dial if they have that set up.
Okay. And yeah, God, Rubens, he's asked a lot of questions. We'll ask you one more, and then we'll wrap up and kind of done the full hour.
Okay.
It said, can you export a page as a CSV or PDF? For example, if a client has 100 WAN connections and you want to export all the WAN IP to a CSV, how would you do that?
We don't have any way kind of right in the product for you to do that. You may be able to work with our support, and they can help in a lot of cases with stuff like that, but that functionality is not kind of built into where you could do it yourself.
Okay, great. Okay, brilliant. Look, thanks a lot for your time, Scott. I think it's been, helpful and a bit more, in depth than just the general demos that we've been doing in this region.
Okay.
And else, I'm the marketing manager here. I don't think I introduced myself properly at the start. I'm the marketing manager for this region, and I've had a lot of experience with like creating flyers or structuring like a marketing and advertising message. So feel free to send me anything that you have in mind that you want to go to market with the Passportal site to your clients. Happy to have a look and look at your message around there. If it's print or however you feel that you want to get the message out.
Yeah, sounds great. I definitely hope this was helpful and informative. Happy to do it. So hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. We'll send through the recording soon.